Hello, hello, this is Irene with SaugaTalks. Hello, everyone. I speak weekly with fascinating people in tech. So please listen. Listen to SaugaTalks on major podcasting platforms. Watch on YouTube. I want your comments. I want your likes because it's not just for my own sake, it's for larger audiences out there to discover the fantastic talks because with me here are executives, influencers, experts, people who matter in the technical world. And we talked about AI, we're talking about automation, we're talking about sustainability, uh, important trends that's out there. But it's good to have wonderful guests with me here. And today I'm incredibly privileged because Talani J. Talibo with me. Talani, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. I'm happy to be here.
At SaugaTalks, as I mentioned, automation takes central stage in a lot of conversation I'm having here. And you, Tolani, you're an expert, you're a founder, you're an RPA company founder, which is incredible. It is completely incredible accomplishment so far, Tolani. Why don't we start? Because we announced the topic as preparing for intelligent automation. Where do you see the technical business leaders should start when we think about intelligent automation these days?
I think it's not just intelligent automations with any tech. You need to really have a vision for it. So particularly intelligent automation, you need the vision, the clear vision that needs to be communicated top down. And when we're talking about vision, we're talking about, what are your vision for your intelligent automation? This is usually would be tied to, what your company is trying to achieve. For a company like Amazon, for example, customer service is key. And when you're creating a vision for intelligent automation, you need to tie that into customer service, something that's achievable. Some goals with it as well. We want to reduce customer wait times by 75%. And how do we achieve that? So it's all about your strategy for achieving that. So it's intelligent automation is different from RPA or some of the other technologies because you're thinking more strategic as opposed to thinking more tactical with the solutions. So it's a lot with vision. Then once you have defined what your vision looks like, it's very important to have, you need to have all your key stakeholders. And with intelligent automation, you're talking about people from the business. You're talking about your senior management, your CTO, CIO, who's going to be sponsoring your intelligent automation practice. And most especially, and also especially, you need IT. IT needs to be prepared, IT readiness for intelligent automation, because without IT, you're pretty much just walking on eggshells. So you need all these key people, business heads, all these key people, part of your intelligent automation practice. They need to be part of your stakeholders. Then once you've defined, what your this kind of structure for yourself, like once you have the buy-in, the next thing is always to think about organization. The next thing to think about is the technology, as opposed to starting with the technology then trying to define your organization. So you start with what's our organization going to look like? Is it going to be a center of excellence? Is it going to be a federated practice? What are kind of people we need? And the people you need depends on what you're trying to achieve. Especially that comes back to your vision. So if you're talking about customer service, you're probably thinking about maybe chatbot, some of the other underlying technologies, and that brings me back to my typical example about your carpenter's toolbox. Every time I talk about intelligent automation, I always mention your carpenter's toolbox. A carpenter would always have whatever they need for the job, right? They would never carry everything they have in their toolbox for a job. They would only carry what they need for the job. Meaning every company would have their intelligent automation would look different because it depends on what they're trying to achieve. So when you define all this, what are your technology areas, then based on what your technology might look like, you might start thinking about different set of people. You might be looking at an ML engineer, for example. You might be looking at a data, specialist, your BI, your RPA, low code, depending on what you're trying to achieve. And also there are other things that would really support in terms of your strategy. You need to think about how would you deliver. Again, it's another question. How would you deliver? What's your governance going to look like? What's your support going to look like? How do you deliver business outcome? It's all about, I would always say, it's all about strategy. And how you go about it, the different steps you go about it, but at the end of the day, you're trying to get to a favorable business outcome.
Well, could you give us some examples maybe where successful thought through strategy realized to business outcomes, to companies' bottom line? Maybe one of the clients you worked with, you don't need to name the names, but kind of successful projects where you've seen, tremendous
No,
results.
I think I probably draw on my experience working in the financial services, and the financial services are the early adopters of OPA, especially, and now they are leaning towards intelligent automation. So they will still be the early adopters of intelligent automation, and they've started with some of the business outcomes. Like for example, I used to work with an insurance firm, and during that time, there was a lot of, we want to reduce like claim processing. We want to be, faster, be able to process claims, for example. And at that point, it was quantifiable. This is something I always tell people as well. This is quantifiable. They are quantifiable results. And, once they are quantifiable, you can measure them. You can't track what you can't measure what you can track, So there's some of the result, and especially that came down to claim processing, like car insurance, and trying to reduce the wait times. We're talking about going from weeks, months to about a few days. Trying to process claim for claim insurance, like your windscreen, fatal accidents and all of that. And you can kind of just see, based on having that, you've defined what you're trying to achieve, and you also putting out the right technologies to go with it, like your low code technology, in terms of forms, in terms of relationship with the customer as well. So customers are able to relate, with a lot of digitization going on in the background. They're able to relate using local technologies, and you have your your back office using a lot of RPA, with information from your low code, that's powering a lot of the automation in the background. And there's also other digitizations of different steps, like your sending SMSs, sending emails, doing follow-ups and all of that. But all of this boils down to what are you trying to achieve. And once you know what you're trying to achieve, it's easier to put in the right technologies for it.
So I know you talk a lot about intelligent document processing. Could you spell out for us how important is IDP for business leaders as well as technical experts?
So IDP, again, why I have this opportunity, I probably want to explain what IDP is.
Please.
I always say this because IDP is different from using optical character recognition, which is a different technology for electronic conversions of handwritten type documents whatsoever into like some structured format. But IDP is it's a whole pipeline, right? You need more than OCR for IDP. You need computer vision, ML, and different other type of technology like NLP. And the idea behind this is to take in, ingest a lot of documents, pre-process it, and classify it, then extract structured data from it. So the idea behind IDP is for companies and business leaders to be able to, access stored away documents. They should be able to access this and get relevant insight from it. So for business leaders, it's very crucial to have IDP in the center of your intelligent automation practice, because it unlocks a lot of opportunities from your email channels, from your social media channels, from your emails, from different channels, even your ECM technologies like your OneDrive, all of this. So the IDP products can ingest as much information and process thousands, millions of records, and these records will give RPA, what I like to call the brain, to be able to action a lot of automations based on quality insight.
In entire automation space, we throw a lot of acronyms, a lot of terms out there, all right? And I have to ask my automation guests here to help us to orient, larger audience over there, because RPA, BPM, hyper automation, now IDP, process mining, AI, of course, right? Machine learning somewhere in there, right? So, just a question for you, Tolani. How, for someone who is mildly interested in automation space, where can they start to kind of situate themselves in this complex space of different technologies, methodologies, right? And frankly, yeah, this new space that's evolving.
So it depends on, if we're talking about, let's say, an organization, right? Because organizations can actually promote, some of this, understanding around intelligent automation, which is also known as, hyper automation or digital process automation. Companies can actually help in terms of, citizen development, for example. And this helps, not just anyone from the business, but any other person that's not technical. That's what we call citizen developers. And they're able to, come into that, and actually provide a lot of value for companies, deliver software using low code and all of that. But from a technical perspective, I started from RPI, and now it's almost like RPI is evolving into intelligent automation. So for companies like the financial services, you would see a lot of RPA. And if
Mhm.
you're trying to get into the space, the easiest way would be you have to start with, either RPA, or you start with low code, or you start with BPM before thinking about intelligent automation, right? Because it becomes very complex to assimilate. But the fact is, once you get the idea of what automation is, and the question of what is automation, automation is anything that makes our life easier, right? So we've been using automation for so many years, but once you get into the concept of we're trying to make things easier, then what kind of technologies are in that space? And these technologies did different. I'd be honest with you. You still have your ERP systems that are doing automation of some sort. You have different kind of systems, but the idea behind this is to start, pick a technology and try to understand what a technology. And the funny thing about all these technologies is that they actually have a converging point. And the converging point is intelligent automation. It doesn't really matter where you start from. But once you understand that technology, you see opportunities that would arise for intelligent automation. But once you start, but you need to evolve with the technology. You need to evolve, and that's what financial services have done. They've evolved with RPA, and they've seen that okay, there's some challenges with RPA. There are some loopholes with RPA. RPA can do only a certain amount of automation, which is like rule based, and they're beginning to evolve with that. Meaning they're beginning to look at other alternative technologies as well, or complementary technology, as you might call it, and get into that space of intelligent automation, and which is still at its infancy. Like it's still trying to mature. It's not fully matured space.
Yes, you touched a little bit on low code, no code, right, and citizen developers. So, can we talk a little bit about incorporating low code, no code technologies in the organizations, and what would it take, in your opinion?
So I think low code is a very, it's, I wouldn't even call it a technology. I call it it's almost like a revolution, or it's a movement, right? It's different from the way, and low code has been, the movement has been around for a while,
Mhm.
but the idea behind it then was, you had a lot of low code database and low code programming languages and some of all these things, but it's evolved to the point where I don't know if you've seen it, but the job market is in a frenzy at the moment. People, most companies have more openings than people are willing to fill those openings, and this also boils down to, sometimes the skill set, and trying to keep, retain talent has been is it's an ongoing issue, and that's where really local really plays a lot of value, because with low code companies can actually train their current workforce to use this technology to be able to deliver value. And the reason why local really existed was because of the traditional IT. So the traditional IT have take a while to actually develop a product. This goes through a series of testing, series of development, feedbacks and all of that. So some companies could be looking at to invest into a technology for 1 to 2 years before they actually start getting a lot of benefit from it. But with low code, actually, companies can start getting a lot of benefit. There's a company, I'm not going to mention the name. They're in Australia, and they've been able to develop like 35 applications. 35 applications within 18 months. And this is all. through both professional and citizen development going on in that organization, and they've given power to, like, your as people would like to sell it, your Bob in finance, your Sarah in HR. They've given them, empowered them to the extent that they can actually contribute. They're actually seeing the whole life cycle. And one thing about low code as well is you don't really need to worry too much about mobile application, how this would look on the mobile interface. This is some of the problems with traditional IT, because sometimes they want it to be cross-platform interoperability, but low code actually takes away all of that. They don't really need to know the latest infrastructure, like you're using React, you're using all of this. You don't really need to know any of them, right? All you just need to do is actually use the tool and start delivering business outcomes.
And I know a lot of boot camps that are training, people without college degree, with college degree, mid-career people. You're absolutely right, mentioning all the flexibility low code, no code provides, totally. But why don't we jump into some technical skills? Okay, those that are leading organizations forward, and how to get those, if you can give an advice.
So in terms of the technical skill, I just feel like there's going to be a lot. There's going to be an interplay in terms of skill set, and there's something I always like to talk about is different types of individuals. So you have like the T-shaped individuals, you have the I-shaped individuals. The T-shaped individuals have enough depth, meaning, for example, they have C# skills, or coding skills, and they're able to develop and good good software. Then you have other broad knowledge of, let's say, cloud, different other infrastructure, low code, no code, but they have a broad knowledge, meaning they be able to work in cross-functional teams. They have that kind of expertise. They'll be able to collaborate. But your I-shaped individuals, which a lot of companies have relied on in the past a lot, is someone that knows just one thing, right? And the problem with intelligent automation, we're looking at a couple of technologies. We're looking at different varied skill set. Whatever bring it to the team. It's going to be relevant. So I will always advise having you need all these technical skills. You need someone, for example, as the way with the way AI is growing, most companies will definitely need a data analyst. They will need some ML engineers that can actually use mine a lot of data, mine a lot of their datas, and use them to give insight. You would still need your traditional coders as well. Your traditional coders will still be working on very complex tasks. You can't really take away all the idea of coding and replace that with low code, right? There are opportunities for low code, and there are also opportunities for full time, full heavy coding. So companies will still need all these technical skills. You definitely need RPA. It's always best to layer RPA, with different other technologies, because it seems to work very well. Process mining and RPA, low code and RPA, chatbot and RPA. So RPA would still be the fabric. It's connecting all of these technologies together. And I think in terms of that skill set, it's going to be multifaceted. What companies are looking for at this point. And I think I started seeing some of the if you've seen it on LinkedIn, people have gone from RPA developer or local developer, into intelligent automation consultants. So it's all the dynamics have changed, because people are beginning to say, oh, I can really bring in all this my technical skill set, and it's going to be relevant to the role.
Wonderful. Yeah, yeah. Thank you. Thank you for these guidelines. I learn a lot. I learn a lot from my guest over here, Tolani. So thank you for sharing it. I'm sure people will find value. All right, if they kind of incline towards one end or another, because yeah, intelligent automation universe is only expanding. All right, it's not gonna slow down. We will need more people, not less people. Although people, somehow get this idea that yes, automation replacing talent. So that's not the case. Lots of opportunities out there, and you mentioned a few. Yeah, absolutely, a few important areas on LinkedIn, even jobs, right, where companies seeking for talent and they cannot fulfill that talent as of. Absolutely. So why don't we jump into intelligent automation projects? Okay, any successes, any like beautiful inspiring examples, how organizations transformed, how they reach their goals, and again, people, right? People, of course, keeping customers and employees happier. Mhm.
I think it's a very popular use case. It's about invoice processing. No matter how big the organization is, or is a small enterprise or SME, you would definitely process invoices. And for larger organizations, you have segregation of duties where you have your accounts payable, you have your account receivable, your suppliers, you have procurement. There's a lot of actors in place. And when you have, with your accounts payable, they process all incoming invoices. And this would be all coming invoices. It could be PDF, it could be paper form, wherever it, electronic form, doesn't really matter. So, but they do a lot of, manual task, because they have suppliers, different suppliers for big organizations. Let's say you call it Microsoft, for example. They will potentially have different suppliers providing some different kind of service to them, right? And once this invoice is coming to their table, let's say through a centralized mailbox, for example, whether scanned, doesn't really matter how it looks like. There's a lot of manual task, and the manual task involves data entry into ERP, data validation, for example, just and looking at, let's say, even as simple as looking at the line items to make sure that line items actually equal the grand total, right? Looking for errors, discrepancies, looking for matching against POs and all of that. And there's a lot of task, there's a lot of effort spent on data validation. And normally, this would normally, upon receipt of an invoice, you should have 30 days to, fulfill that invoice and pay your suppliers. But some companies still have problems trying to pay their suppliers because there's a lot of back and forth. And that's where automation and RPA and IDP comes into place. IDP can be hooked up to your email boxes, right? And so it directly ingests this document from different sources. It can be coming from different sources. Even there are opportunities to even open up like mobile apps as well, where your suppliers can scan invoices. So IDP can integrate with all of these different sources. It does a couple of things for you, right? The first thing it would try to do is index those documents. So opportunities for companies to index documents. It indexes documents. It's able to split and make a decision whether this is a supplier invoice, if this is a credit memo, for example, or different types of invoices. And once it does that, once it's able to classify that, it's able to do even some manual checks as well for you, right? Validate, if the grand total is equals the number of line totals as well. It's able to do all these this validation verification. If there's a signature required, it checks it, just to validate there's a signature on file. Then it's also one beauty about IDP is it has several connectors, right? And some of these connectors, can link you up with RPA, and some of the connectors can also link you up with ERP directly, right? So, but if you had RPA in that, in that position as well, doing some, some repetitive task, so your RPA is able to go into your ERP and do like, PO matching. Your RPA is able to go into your ERP to do a lot of data entry, right? Your RPA is able to, route a lot of the requests to different teams, like your procurement team is able to do a lot of validation, and is also able to do a lot of chase ups as well, like sending emails, trying to receive, information from your suppliers as well. So that kind of helps, and that can help you reduce the number of back and forth. And you can take a process that could take between 30 to 35 days just down to a day. It's really possible with RPA. So you can even most of the time the suppliers are already receiving, they're receiving payment within a few days. So I think that's the beauty of seeing invoice processing and RPA coming to life and helping companies to achieve really really great outcomes.
Why don't we jump into some of the automation trends this year, Tolani? All right, because we read a lot of articles, we get a lot of information from resources we all subscribe to, and automation, of course, at the center of enterprise technology stack. So, can you please comment on a few that I just discovered? What about convergence of automation platforms? Right now it's quite a complex space, right? Because every organization need to pick and choose technology and methodology, and of course the right stack that works for them. So convergence, do you see it in the future?
Yes, there's a lot going on at the moment, and all of the existing platforms like automation platforms are converging into intelligent automation, which is quite glaring. Everyone is beginning to think about, solutions, vertical solutions for it. If you look at your typical RPA, your traditional RPA started as, being traditional, doing screen scraping. Now, right, most of the automation vendors have opportunities for IDP, right? They have IDP platforms, they have process mining platforms, and all of this platform, because there's been that gap, and that organizations can see, even vendors could see it as well. And this low code RP and all of this is actually helping. Pulling them together. It's not just one platform. I'm sorry to say, but even though some platforms will sell, different products, but it doesn't mean that you're getting the best of both worlds. It's almost like you need to handpick some of these platforms. And actually, I prefer to build my intelligent automation, platform, as opposed to buying into one vendor, because that requires you to get locked in into one vendor. But you choosing, but again, this requires a bit of expertise. You can't choose without really knowing so much about the platforms. So this requires a bit of expertise. But the best is you can, unpick, I need RPI, I can take Blue Prism, or I need, open source, I can use open source, I need this, I need that. And that's where your enterprise architect really comes into place, helping you to choose the right platform that would help your business to grow.
And we cannot escape, Tolani, talking about intelligent automation without mentioning explicitly AI, right? The rising AI continues to expand. So what can be automated now? I mean, something new that we could not do, 5, 10 years ago?
I always say automation has been, it's been there for a while. You had, since the Industrial Revolution, there's been automation. But I think it became much more glaring when AI came into the picture, right? People forget that, we've been automating for a while. And but the problem, I think why it became so glaring with AI is the fact that AI was actually coming to the white collar jobs. So meaning it's in the office, you're saying, you could be working, co-working with AI at this point. So it became very glaring that AI can do more. And in terms of some of these technologies we're talking about, intelligent automation, the reason why it's called intelligent is because there's AI involved. AI is helping businesses to make more decisions, right? Faster decisions. And this is also a good example of why IDP is there, right? When you talk about IDP, you're looking at different components that make up an IDP solution. You're talking about machine learning, you're talking about computer vision, you're talking about NLP. All of this technology can do different justice, right? And you're looking at with IDP, for example, like you could be getting accuracy depending on the kind of documents you're looking at. You could be getting up to 95% accuracy. And this is something that this, I think people can't really phantom how AI is really penetrating to the white collar job. But the idea is to really augment workers, not replace them, to augment their decision making, to help them make some more informed, can co-work with them, like your chatbots and all of that, to help them make more decisions, to make much more intelligence. There's a lot of intelligence that need to come from AI, and that's why some of the other technologies, your ERP and all of that, have been going through a lot of phases, because it's all rule based, but AI is really, really helping with decision making.
Yeah, well, last topic I wanted to kind of probe you on enterprise automation, because one thing we know, right? One project, right? One initiative at a time, showing early success, demonstrating what's possible, right? And growing from there. You mentioned center of excellence, right? Some organizations using hubs, automation hubs technology, right? So how do you approach the enterprise-wide automation? Because the stakes are high, the cost is high, cost of implementing, cost of technology, cost of hiring people. So any few helpful tips out there?
I think the financial industry, again, my advice would be a lot for the financial industry. There's a lot of, obviously, there's a lot of heavy lifting, there's a lot of work to be done. And, when enterprises are looking at, automation, they need to think strategic, as opposed to very, tactical thinking, because at the end of the day, you want to invest into a technology. Are you going to invest into technology and just spend all your time doing proof of concept? rubbish. You probably want to invest and start getting returns. Few months, few weeks, you probably want to start seeing a lot of return on investment. And when companies start looking at enterprise wide automation, is completely different. And this sometimes doesn't let like things like your citizen development to thrive, because enterprise automation would always be very rigid. Everything has to be done a particular way, and we need governance cannot be overemphasized. So for an enterprise level, you need governance, you need your center of excellence, you need people responsible for what. So it's not like you expect one person to do different tasks. You actually really need people to be assigned to one task and pulling in their weight. So, and this comes in from the perspective of your center of excellence. What are your center of excellence helping you to do, right? Your center of excellence is bringing all this talent in, right? Your center of excellence has your business analyst. Your center of excellence have your project managers, all these people that can help you execute your developers, testers, or whatever you want to call them, that can help you execute any project. They help even with innovation. They help with governance. They help with standards. So it's always best for companies to actually to delegate some of the responsibilities to a center of excellence. And your center of excellence keeps your platform going. You have, and they're also supported by IT. It doesn't really matter where your center of excellence sits. Some companies will have their center of excellence sits within the business, while some will have within IT. It doesn't really matter where they sit, but what they do is very paramount to the success of your automation program, right? And if you're going to think about enterprise level, anything enterprise, to me, it sounds like scale. You're going to start thinking about how to scale, and you need the right people to scale. You really need the right technology to scale. You need people that have the technical know-how to scale. You need people with the business that are business savvy to scale. So it's a combination of different people, and bringing them all together, I would always prefer like a center of excellence. It doesn't really mean there are other ways to organize people, but a center of excellence just helps you to channel so much of your efforts.
Tolani, thank you so very much for your time today. I had tremendously, wonderful time speaking with you. As takeaways, in conclusion, would you leave our audiences with few takeaways? It could be technical, it could be business, it could be enterprise-wise advice. What do we want, audience to remember about automation 2022? What's coming or what's already happening?
I think the first thing I want people to remember is democratization. We've gotten to that point where automation needs to be democratized. It's already happening, but I would always advise to get involved with this. There's so many things happening within the space. Democratization coming from the open source technologies. It's opening up a new opportunity for companies to get into automation, even for SME as well. Democratization is very important. Then even governance and security. Governance and security can never be an afterthought. It's been an afterthought for some companies, and they're going through the they're going through the effect, and they're suffering at the moment. But governance and security can never be an afterthought. If you're thinking of going into intelligent automation, you definitely need security. You definitely need to think about ethics as well. You're thinking about AI, you need to think about ethics, about what your company can do with data, because in the very end, we're talking about customer data. What can your companies do with the data, with the right permission? So going into that mindset of how are we going to transform? When you think about intelligent automation, you should think about digital transformation. So transformation has to be the involvement of everybody, not just IT. It needs to be pushed top down, from bottom up, whatever approach, but everyone needs to pull in their weight and really transform the company.
Thank you, Talani. Thank you so very much.